Hello, listeners. Before we start, I just want to remind you, you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime.
You are listening to the Nighttime Podcast.
Hello, listeners. You can consider this a bonus episode of Nighttime, but if you've been following the disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan, this is an episode you'll want to listen in on. It's now been over 2 weeks since the 4- and 6-year-old siblings were reported missing from their Nova Scotia home, and despite an unprecedented search effort, there's still no trace of them. What began as a baffling story of 2 children possibly wandering off has only become more troubling with time. And as details emerge, so do many disturbing questions. Questions about the timeline, the results of the search, and the circumstances within the children's home. In this episode, I'm going to be joined by Graeme and Kate, the hosts of the True North True Crime podcast, for a detailed discussion about this deeply unsettling case. Together, we're going to walk through what's known, what's suspected, and what just doesn't add up. So while this episode wasn't a part of the regular release schedules, it may be one of the most important discussions we've had about this case yet. So let's get into it. Tonight, on this episode of Nighttime, we'll again be asking, where are Lilly and Jack Sullivan?
A desperate search is underway tonight in Nova Scotia. 2 siblings, aged just 4 and 6, are believed to have wandered away from their home on Friday morning and haven't been seen since.
Post any officers they can get, have the New Brunswick border, PI border, and get them at every airport possible.
I want to hold them, and I want them home.
You know, when you hear of a missing child, that's a really big deal, but it generally will get wrapped up really quickly. When you hear of 2 missing kids, for now going into its 3rd week, it's unprecedented. It's a parent's worst nightmare. And I think I can say, based on the reaction of Nova Scotians, it's something people are just not willing to accept.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think what is also frustrating about this case is there's not a lot of information known about the family. And so that's kind of led to a lot of online speculation just about everybody involved in the family. What do we know about the parents and the kids?
Mm-hmm. We know very little, and it's important to be able to separate fact from fiction. But in essence, what we know as a fact here is we have a family living in Pictou County, Nova Scotia, which is a rural area. They live in Lansdowne Station, which is kind of like a rural area of a small town. And in the home, it is a stepfather, Daniel Martel, his partner, Malaya Brooks Murray. And Malaya has 2 children from a prior relationship. That is 4-year-old Jack and 6-year-old Lilly. Daniel and Malaya have a 16-month-old baby together. So you have the 5 of them in this house. And to describe the property, they have a large yard. It's a home on a quiet highway. It's not like a subdivision where there's going to be neighbors on each side. Each side of this house is forest. Mm-hmm. Behind the house is forest. The house itself is pretty run down. It kind of looks like a trailer that's been converted into a home with almost like a makeshift fence around the backyard, as well as there's just a lot of stuff in their yard. It's I would describe it as an unkempt property, and that's important to say just because so much of the search involves these kids getting out and where they may have gone. I should also say that the forest that surrounds their home isn't like a go for a jog on the paths in this woods.
It's wilderness.
Yeah, it is wilderness. There's a lot of steep hills. We had a massive hurricane here just about a year ago, so there's a lot of downed trees. And where we have so much like spruce and pine trees, when they're knocked down and they dry out, they just create an impenetrable wall of forest. So the area that's being searched for these kids behind this home, it's if you wanted to walk a kilometer into that woods, it would be a hell of a mission that would take you all day. I couldn't imagine a 4-year-old doing it.
Yeah, we took part in some ground searches last summer, and by the time we got in there, once the blackberry bushes had started to grow in, and once the spring growth had come in, what we were walking through at times was, at least anywhere from 3 to 6 foot of growth and bush. With
You need a machete to get through.
You need a machete to get through, and we're literally walking where no one has walked in years or whatever, or forever, so it's like it just gets. And then you also have everything that has fallen from the tree and died the previous year now makes up the forest floor, which is now, over the years, several feet higher than it once was, or unless it gets washed out or whatever. So it's like you're really dealing with such dangerous and tricky terrain. Even if you are a trained SAR person, like it's not easy to get through by any means. And you're looking for small people.
Yeah. Let's go back to what we know about that morning. What were the kids wearing? Is there a description of what they looked like at the time? How much they had on them? Is there any of that?
There is, but all of it almost has to be taken with a grain of salt, because when you think of this morning, so this all happens on a Friday morning. I mentioned that Daniel and Malaya have a 16-month-old baby together. The way they tell the story is that they were laying in bed, dozing, having a late slumber with their 16-month-old. Lilly and Jack had woken up earlier, and they were out in the main area of the home, like the living room or whatnot. So as Daniel, Malaya, and the baby are in bed, they can hear Jack and Lilly, and it's been said that Lilly actually came into the master bedroom a couple times to, just say hi or whatever. Mm-hmm. But Malaya and Daniel and the baby just kind of lazed in bed. Around 10 a.m. is when they noticed it wasn't the noise of Jack and Lilly that woke them up. It was actually the silence.
Yeah.
The home is completely silent, and they say, what's up with that?
Parent, that's weird. You're like, wait.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you, as a parent of 2 kids myself, when they're quiet is when you got to worry. Yeah. They jumped out of bed, and Lilly and Jack were nowhere to be found. Daniel rushes out of the home to begin searching around the backyard. Malaya does the same. Not long after that, Malaya calls 911 to report the 2 children missing. And that is really where the trail ends, because from that point on, nothing is found. But we do have a description of what they were wearing. And I believe this description was the source of basically deduction, because they didn't see Jack that morning. They were in bed. They heard Jack, but they didn't see him. And Lilly just kind of like opened the door and kind of popped her head in. So they didn't get a good look at her either. The initial version of what they were wearing was both wearing rain boots. The 4-year-old Jack was initially described as just wearing a pull-up diaper, where Lilly was thought to be wearing a pink outfit and carrying her backpack, which is a white backpack with like a red strawberry pattern on it. Several days later, the description of Jack was updated to be, they believe he was wearing a brown shirt and brown pants. But other than just wearing her in pink, him in brown, her with a backpack, and both of them in rain boots, that's about as much as we got. But
and I think we should add here that so Wednesday was a professional development day at school, so the kids were not at school that day. Then on Thursday, Jack and Lilly were also not at school because Lilly had a cough. And then on Friday, the kids were also not at school that day. So there was 3 days that the kids were off. So that I just want to throw that out there because it's been spoken about, but also because, when if the parent's lying in bed with the 16-month-old and you got 2 kids who didn't go to school that morning, that means you didn't throw them into their clothes and hand them, you didn't see everything that,
they probably dressed
that they
themselves.
were wearing, right?
They dressed themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So they would have either dressed themselves or put on or had just been in their pajamas or whatever, because it was 10 o'clock in the morning. So it's not like you had like clothes laid out for them to start their day and then go off to school. So like, I think that could add to some of the confusion as to what maybe they were wearing.
Maybe, but I think also this idea of them missing school earlier or throughout the week, I think also adds to a lot of the discussion online, because it just shows that this wasn't a regular week. These children disappearing at the end of an unusual week, because it wouldn't be common to have your kids miss 2 days of school for not a great reason, like having a little cough. When you have school-age children, it's so like whatever's going around as far as viruses, it makes its way through all the 4 and 6-year-olds. So it's probably unusual to not have a runny nose or a cough, for a 4-year-old is in what in Nova Scotia we call pre-primary, which is like the lowest grade. And it's, that part, I wouldn't say it hasn't sat well with me, but it's just, to me, I've always thought like an unusual time to go missing at the end of these, this absence from school over several days. Right. And it also raises a lot of questions online where people are asking who was the last person to see the children other than the parents. That's a big question. And I think that's a reasonable question that people have. And I haven't seen that publicly answered by anyone yet, but I'm sure at this point in the investigation that that conversation is happening in a police
law enforcement for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, but speaking of law enforcement, so we know Maleha called police at 10 a.m. or around 10 a.m. or somewhere between 10 and or when they noticed the kids were missing. When did police arrive on scene? And when did the searches begin? Because from what I've read online, it looks like the organized searching did not start until the following day.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of times when you hear of a missing persons case, you hear this story of like trying to get taken seriously and trying to get a response. This story isn't one of those. When the call was made to the police just after 10 a.m., I think it was within like 25 minutes that the first cops were on site. And shortly after that, a specialized, I guess it was a specialized unit that operates a drone and assists in missing persons cases was on scene. And they hit the ground running. As soon as this call was made, it was taken seriously. And one way we know, and we're not just saying that, we can hear that, because one thing that surfaced online is recordings of the emergency dispatch radios. They were using a kind of radio that was used by like fire teams and stuff, and again, in search and rescue in this area. So the public had access to the 911 dispatchers calling the police. They were all using this public radio, and it was all recorded. So you can hear the dispatcher talking back and forth with the different units that are on the ground searching. You can hear them calling the police and trying to get the pictures of the children out to the press. You can hear them arranging more units to come and assist in the search. And I can say, with everything I've listened to, it was an all hands on deck search starting Friday at around noon. I think there was something like 40 searchers on the scene that afternoon.
And that grew to 100 the next day, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. Like after the first night of those kids being in the woods Friday night, Saturday morning, it was already huge news. And that's when we started seeing teams of upwards of 150 trained volunteer searchers, helicopters, drones, search dogs. And they were also like, and it wasn't just helicopters buzzing around, like looking down in the woods. They were using like high-tech equipment. They were using like heat-sensitive cameras so they could get a sense of where something was in the woods based on its heat signature. And then they would send the team to search that area, but hoping that it'd be the children. I'm sure they're like, in the end, they were probably chasing foxes and deers through this forest, but it's that was the kind of search methodology they used. But as the days and nights stretched on with no news of anyone being found, that's really when the online discourse surrounding this case boiled over to what it is now, which is just an utter mess, to put it lightly.
And I also just want to jump in here because I know there's going to be people asking, why was an Amber Alert not issued? And a lot of people don't realize that an Amber Alert is only issued when authorities have reasonable grounds to assume that somebody was abducted. We'll get more into the abduction theory later because I know stepdad thinks that these two children were abducted. But it seems like police have no hard evidence to go down that line of suspicion
Amber
yet.
Alerts have very certain criteria, and I wish more people would understand this because I see this all the time. But it's like if they know the individual that the kid is with, or if they have a car, there's like very certain parameters. Then they can issue an Amber Alert. They can't just issue an Amber Alert if it's not like an abduction, if they don't, they think it's just a missing person or whatever. But,
I know, and I almost wish the parameters weren't so tight because I think
but then it's a different thing, right? Like it's not. Or the Amber program was like passed by by a certain certain reasons that came into play. So if we want to create other alerts, we have to create other Silver Alert and that kind of thing. We have to.
Yeah. like if everything becomes an Amber Alert, we'll need some new thing for when it's and with an Amber Alert, it needs to be proof of an abduction, but you also need identifying information on the abductor, like a make and a model of a car. So if every missing child, and you'll see people online saying every case should be an Amber Alert, but then how do you prioritize the ones where you have a certain person you're looking for that's on the highway?
Literally heading for the border, you know, and that's what you're trying to address, right? And I do want to hop in here because, like, for us, we had in British Columbia, we had a Lilly go missing as well in Chilliwack. And so Lilly was, I'm just going to pull it up here. It was on May 1st, 2025, around 4 p.m. 6-year-old Lilly Corsall went missing near her home in Chilliwack, British Columbia. Now, it turns out that she had followed 2 neighborhood dogs into a wooded area, but she didn't return with the dogs. The dogs came back. They didn't bring Lilly back with her. Now, her grandmother noticed that she was absent. She initiated a search despite the extensive efforts by the family. They couldn't find her, so they called RCMP and search and rescue. Now, remarkably, she was found the next day at 3:54 p.m. And here's the thing is, like, I know that people are like, how far can a young person get? How far can a kid get, right? And she had gone 700 meters away from her house, so a kilometer away from her house in thick Pacific Northwest forest and brush. But, you know, luckily she was found alive. She was very animated and funny when she came out of the forest and stuff like that. So, and she's small too. So I could see, you know, a child being scared in the middle of the night in the forest and just crouching down in like a, you know, beside a tree or something like that and just waiting until the morning or whatever. But again, like, she wasn't found until the afternoon. But it's, you know, that was the story when we first heard about Jack and Lilly going missing. I was like, well, isn't that weird? This is going to be the exact same sort of thing. They're going to find these poor kids, you know, 24 hours later. But it seems that just did not happen despite a very extensive search.
A search that went on and on. It was like a full week of searching. And in fact, right now, we're recording this Sunday, the 18th. About a week ago, they scaled back, quote unquote, scaled back or stopped searching. Yeah. But this weekend, they restarted the search. So the team of 150 or so search and rescue people, supported by helicopters and dogs and drones, were searching the forest again this weekend. Now over 2 weeks later, and I think that's really surprising.
Which is really interesting to me because it's like, did they get information that led them back out there?
Or are they feeling pressure from the media and from the public?
Is the public upset? Because I know the public was really, really upset online when they decided to scale it back.
Yeah, but it's true. But I don't know if they would let public pressure, if that would motivate them to send, you know, 150 people into the woods doing more grid searches. But if it was a tip, let's say that encouraged them to search, again, you wouldn't need all those people. If somebody gave some tip of where something may be, you'd think it'd just be a couple cops that would go out there and check for it, not 150 people doing a grid search. So it's, I think it's really surprising. But just one thing about this case that I think makes it different than so many other missing persons or missing children cases is the fact that there's 2 of them. So much of this is unprecedented. If 2 children wander off, or if one child wanders off and they're not found, something happened. They fell in a well. An animal attack or something may have happened. But if there's 2 of them, it makes all of that so much more improbable. If one of the children fell in an old well, let's say, the other one wouldn't jump down there to help them. They would run home and get help. If one of them fell in water, maybe the other one tried to help them and went in there as well. But more than likely, they wouldn't both end up drowning, you would think. But all that said, water is another kind of mystery in this story. Is there is a lot of water in the area where the 2 children went missing, but it's not rivers and running water. It's like lakes, which generally isn't going to hide human remains for long. No. And most of the large bodies of water in this area have been searched by divers at this point.
Yeah. And that's how this one differs from, like, many listeners will know the story of Dylan Ehler. This happened 5 years ago. I mean, I think we're at the 5-year anniversary of that case. It was May 6, 2020. 3-year-old Dylan Ehler vanished from his grandmother's backyard in Truro, Nova Scotia. His grandmother, Dorothy Parsons, reported that Dylan was playing outside with the family dog when he disappeared, and despite the immediate search efforts, only his rubber boots were found in a nearby brook, leading authorities to believe that he may have fallen into the water. And that brook was like a pretty high, like raging river brook that led to a much larger river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the similarities between these two stories, Jack and Lilly and Dylan Ehlers, are just unmistakable and quite chilling. Where Dylan disappeared from in Truro is about an hour away from Pictou. So for all intents and purposes, it's pretty similar. Both disappearances, Dylan Ehlers as well as Jack and Lilly's, seem to have occurred in a short period of time during a moment of inattention by their caregiver. In Dylan's case, his grandmother, who was looking after him, said to have turned her back to him to like put the dog on the leash. She turned back and he's gone. Where in Jack and Lily's case, they were just in the other room, and there's various stories of how they got outside, but most likely slid out the patio door seems to be kind of the consensus.
Yeah.
Jack and Lilly were both said to be going through the process of being tested or diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, as was Dylan, is my understanding.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And the big difference, though, is Jack and Lilly are 2 kids. Dylan Ehler is 1 kid. The online discussion that followed, in Dylan Ehler's case, his parents actually took administrators of a Facebook group to court for defamation and were successful in their suit. And that it was a result of so many people going after Dylan's parents for accusing them. The same thing is happening with Jack and Lily's parents. It's the same online discourse. The parents have been villainized in this. And I've seen stuff so ugly and disturbing, I wouldn't even repeat it. But let's just say that there are people all over the world that are joining up together on Facebook to just riff about how rotten these parents are and all of the horrible things they probably did to Jack and Lilly. And so much of their attacks on Jack and Lily's stepfather and mom are based on misinformation and things psychics said on YouTube and just complete nonsense. After weeks of searching using cutting-edge technology, 150 plus trained search and rescue volunteers, that nothing at all has come back with the exception of one maybe child's boot print deep in the forest.
Yeah, so that boot print was found on May 5th, 2025. So that's 2 days after they initially went missing. And it was deep in the woods. And then the day before that was the first time that stepdad spoke to the media. And that's kind of when he says what happened that morning, that Lilly came into the bedroom multiple times. They were playing out in the kitchen. I'm guessing they slid open the backsliding door. It was like silent to hear it sliding.
Yeah, he described the back patio door as being one that when you open it, just for whatever reason, it just glides well. So it's not this loud, clunky thing that would make you from the bedroom be like, oh, the kids are opening the door to go outside. But rather than us talk about what he said, let's hear from him. I have a recording of, this is him speaking to the news for one of the first times, going in detail of what happened. Here's Daniel Martel.
We were searching. We covered everywhere possible. Even in the first day we did. Even with me running through the woods, I was ahead of the helicopters and ahead of the drones and stuff like that. Screaming as loud as I can, until my throat hurt. Running through water that was up to my waist. And as soon as I got back, I wasn't allowed back in the woods until a man dressed in military outfit said I could go back into the woods.
4 days into the search for his missing stepkids, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, Daniel Martel is pleading with the public to keep their eyes peeled, but he has begun to lose hope they are anywhere in the vicinity.
They hate being wet and cold, so they immediately would have came right back into the house. The only 2 prints are right beside the house facing the road, and then that's it.
Martel wants the search to be extended to include provincial borders in case the children were abducted, a reality he says is becoming more and more likely.
Post any officers they can get at the New Brunswick border, PI border, and get them at every airport possible.
Martel confirmed that when the 2 children went missing from the home behind me, Lilly was wearing a pink shirt and pink rain boots. She was also carrying a white backpack with strawberries on it. Martel says although he didn't see Jack that morning, he is believed to be wearing a brown shirt, brown pants with a pull-up diaper on underneath, and blue rain boots with dinosaurs on them. He also refuted the claim that the two children are nonverbal, saying while they are on the autism spectrum, they are quite trusting and say hi to everyone. According to Martel, his side of the family are currently the only ones at ground zero after Lilly and Jack's mother left the county Saturday. But still, he remains, begging anyone with answers to come forward and bring his children home safe.
Anybody who has any information, or you think you've seen something or hear something, or any messages from friends about hearing something, just contact your local police services. Anything, guys, anything.
So in hearing that, that's him kind of describing the moments after realizing they weren't missing. But that news clip brings up a really interesting point, is that after the day after the children went missing, that Saturday, something happens that leads to a breakdown of the relationship between Daniel and Malaya, which leads to Malaya leaving with her family and the baby to live in another part of the province. And I don't know if he said it in that news clip, but he's been public with the fact that he hasn't talked to her since, and she actually blocked him on Facebook. So whatever is going on led to a breakdown. We know a little bit about it because Daniel, the stepfather, he spoke to the media pretty much throughout this whole thing. He's been open in giving information to the media about the search efforts and what's going on behind the scenes. But his story to the Globe and Mail was that the Saturday, the first full day of the search after the kids went missing, Malaya's family from another part of the province showed up to, I guess, support them and maybe assist in the search and look after the baby and whatnot. But something happened at the home that led to her family accusing him of being responsible for whatever happened to the kids. In the course of defending himself, a verbal altercation broke out, which led to Daniel's mother, who I believe owns the property that he lives in, kicking Malaya and her family off of the property. So they take the baby and leave to another part of Nova Scotia. She blocks him from Facebook. And since that day, the day after the search began, it's just been him there talking to the media. I'm sure, we don't know what's happening with her. I can only assume she's speaking to the RCMP behind the scenes, but not talking to him, not talking to the media. In fact, Malaya, the children's mother, she has only given, as far as I can tell, one interview with the media, and it's a very short clip where she just appears completely broken and disheveled and only appears for, I think, maybe 10, 15 seconds. Do you want to listen to that, and then we can talk about both statements?
Yeah, let's play that now.
I'm just staying as hopeful as possible. I want them home. I want to hold them. And I want them home.
That is it.
That's it. Wow.
But when you and I think that was recorded the next day as well. She looks like she doesn't look like she had slept, to put it lightly. But it's throughout this, we heard in the clip that I played from Daniel, he talks about, my family and I have been here involved in this, and her family are gone off. And it's a lot of people, of course, have made assumptions about what's going on, but I don't think, we don't know enough to really use that information in what happened to these two children. But in my mind, as I try to think this out, I think it was a unique week at the home because the children missed 2 days of school after an in-service day. So they're home with the baby and the two kids for 3 days straight. The children are reported missing Friday. On Saturday, after a 2-year relationship that involves having a kid together, they break up that next day.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, we've covered a lot of missing persons cases, and it is, I would say, rare for the parents of a missing child to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
But not this fast. Like,
no,
the
not
breakup
this
is
fast.
usually
It
like
usually
6
takes
years later. Yeah.
But it is insane how often this breaks relationships down, this type of situation. And it sounds like this is a newer relationship, right? They have a 16-month-old child.
2 years.
Together.
2 years.
And these are two young individuals. I'm not sure how old they both are.
I don't know their ages, but I would say late 20s.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the altercation at home was just, it was so emotional. There are two people who are grieving.
Yeah.
They're high emotions. They just needed to get away from each other in that
when
moment.
blame starts getting put around,
Right.
like, that's
Yeah.
kind of tough. Like, I mean, that's like, it's not time for blame. Although, blame probably gets tossed around pretty early.
It does,
why
absolutely.
did you do this or that or whatever? Like,
I asked you to look at watch the kids while I watched the baby or whatever happened that morning, right? We don't know.
But when you look online or any kind of the discourse around this case, Malaya is being judged heavily for leaving. And just commenters would say things like, if it was my kids, I'd be out there searching. And I understand that. But at the same time, when it's an organized search and rescue team, they're not allowing a mother in shock to be running through the woods, trampling all over the area that they're about to conduct a grid search.
The
They
way
would want her
people,
gone.
the way people talk on Facebook is like, I would do anything for my kids. I'm like, yeah, no, I absolutely agree that you probably would do that. And you wouldn't be being dragged around by search and rescue through tough terrain. Like how fit are you? Like it's like people like, they'll do anything for their kids. They're like a mama bear. They're going to get it done or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's all fair and good. But we're talking about like thousands of kilometers of forested area.
But the search is also, they want to be organized. It's a grid search. So they don't want somebody who is not trained in that type of, educate. Like, they don't have the education. They don't want a person out there emotionally acting because, they might run out. Like, if they see something, they might run, they might contaminate a scene. So they actually, a lot of the times, want family or close contacts of those individuals to not partake in the search.
Yeah, I could imagine the conversation just to be like, Malaya, like, I know you want to help, but we got this and we're going to keep you in the loop every step of the way, but you're not helping us. You won't be able to help us by being out here.
No.
And I do want to add, like, that also goes to Facebook and PR etiquette. Like, these families don't, like, we have worked with missing persons families for 5 years now, and they're not handed a handbook on how to handle things. Most people on social media are not very good at social media. They say a lot of crazy things. They post a lot of stuff. They antagonize people in comment sections. Like, people say things that can be misinterpreted. So, like, if you put your, I'm not defending anybody. I'm just saying, like, put your feet in her shoes. She doesn't owe anybody a big fat statement or anything like that. She is not a social media marketing manager. She's not going to come up with a great PR campaign on how she's going to address this. Like, I know people are demanding statements, but that you're demanding of her is just an invitation to a conversation that she doesn't need to have. Like, she has missing children, and no matter what this turns out to be, that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Like,
and the other thing is like, she can give a statement or he can give more statements. But at the end of the day, people are going to sit there and pick it apart.
Yeah.
No matter what they say, there's always going to be something that people are going to latch onto and take or interpret. You know what I mean? So
I've seen people use past tense before. We've all seen this where
that happened in this case. The stepfather used past tense about what Jack loved to do.
Yeah.
And so people are like, see, he did it.
Yeah, but that's what he means is at the time I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, he loved to collect rocks. He is thinking back to a day which is in the past where the child enjoyed collecting rocks. It's a slip of the tongue. It's not some like indication of guilt, but I see that one so often where it's like, you know what? People use past tense, they use future tense, they use all kinds of tenses. Like, just relax.
Okay.
Like, it's not, you're not like an FBI,
right.
Yeah.
So on May 5th, a boot print was found. And then May 6th, and I understand, I want to say right now, I understand why people have questions in this case. I think until the children are found, people are going to have questions. But May 6th, police take Daniel Martel into the detachment where he's questioned for 4 hours, I believe.
And that's according to Daniel Martel. The reason we know about this is he told the Globe and Mail, like, I was in last night, talked for 4 hours. I volunteered my phone, my router. I'll take a lie detector test. I'll take a drug test, whatever you want. According to him,
they're easy on me because they know I'm telling the truth about everything. I believe was the quote.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if they've given him a polygraph, which I don't even think they'd make public if they did. Right.
I don't think so. And you hear so often they should give so-and-so a lie detector test, or I want a lie detector test. Very rarely do you hear of it actually happening because it's inadmissible anyway. It seems to be the ergatar of investigative techniques. And I think polygraphs are more so used like to call someone's bluff. Like if you think they're not being forthcoming, the cop may say like, what about a polygraph? Like, should we do that with you? Oh, no, forget it. I'll talk. But I think this is him saying, I want a polygraph because I want people to know that I'm not hiding anything. But we do know that the police did take his phone. They took the router from his home, like the internet router, because according to him, what they're trying to do is figure out which devices were in the yard and connecting to his home Wi-Fi and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. What I do know is that the investigation certainly has changed from the search, missing persons search and rescue type search in the forest to something altogether different. The police held a press conference where they announced the scaling back of the search for the children, and they didn't pull any punches. They said themselves, if we thought the children could still be alive out there, we'd still be searching.
And I believe that was May 13th that they issued that big statement where they announced they were kind of pulling back on it. But at that same time, they said, that they have received more than 180 tips, which, by the way, is a lot of work for those police officers to go through.
Each tip needs to be vetted and needs to be documented, and there needs to be evidence of this. These are the actions that we took as a result of this tip. So, like, it could be just information only, or the individual was high risk. They indicated high risk. There's different reasons why they will, but they just have to show the documentation. So when the final file around this is complete, those tips will be included in there and what actions were taken. So those tips
they have
actually
to be very,
slow investigators down.
In fact,
but they're great. We love tips.
Yeah,
if you have
tips,
information, bring them forward. But just know that they create a lot of paperwork for police. Yeah. They have to show their work on all of those tips. And I think they also, from those tips and whatever other police work they've done, they've so far identified 35 people that they'd like to formally interview, including community members and those, quote, closest to the children. So,
Yeah. And of course, we don't know who these 35 people are. I'm sure we can guess who some of them are, would be the, direct family, parents, grandparents. A big question mark in this case, at least online, and one in my head as well, is Lilly and Jack were not the biological children of Daniel Martel. He was their stepfather. So their biological father, is he in the picture? Is he involved in their life in any way? We haven't heard any statement from the RCMP or any direct statements related to that, but that's his identity or his role in this gets brought up a lot in the various conversations that are playing out. But all that to say, like the RCMP have never really wavered on their belief that, or have never wavered on the type of language they use as we're investigating this as children who likely wandered away from home. They have never come out and said, this is now a homicide investigation or foul play. They've always said...
I think they did use the word suspicious today.
What they said is every missing persons case is suspicious until we decide it isn't. But this, at least publicly, they've talked incessantly about these children who wandered off that they're searching for.
Misadventure is what it's looking.
Now again,
until they have a criteria to change that language, which fits like certain boxes are ticked off, and then it becomes this is a major investigation now.
We are recording this May 18th, 2025. And as you mentioned, Jordan, the search was scaled back last week or a week ago, kind of today-ish. But this weekend, for reasons unknown, they decided to begin the search again, resume it again. It's in the same location.
Same location, full-scale search. And that is a complete shock to me. They issued a press release on Friday, the RCMP, a news release, stating that the search will begin anew tomorrow. In the same area, the same kind of 150-ish search and rescue people appearing to do a grid search again in the same area, which is a shock to me. When I heard the search will be beginning again, I assumed there must be some kind of tip. But if
new information. There has to be new information.
But it doesn't. But if there was, it would be a targeted search based on this new information, not just let's go back where we were before and continue what we called off last week. And it would, like, the search would even be harder now because every day that passes, like it's just becoming spring here in Nova Scotia. So it's going to be a little thicker now than it would have been, a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it says, this is from 3 hours ago on CTV News by Paul Hollingsworth. There's a portion in this news article here that says, in addition to suspecting foul play, kidnapping has not been ruled out. So it looks, of course, in any missing persons case, especially when there's two children involved, they're not going to rule anything out until they have located these children, hopefully alive. But at this point, I think a lot of people realize that that's an unlikely outcome.
And I mean, that opens the conversation to the theory of were they abducted? And it's, we know that child abductions or stranger abductions are incredibly rare.
Not impossible.
Impossible, rare.
Highly unlikely, especially in an area like this. When you have a stranger abduction in Canada, it's generally in a metropolitan area, not rural Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
At 9:30 in the morning on a Friday.
And I really want people to understand, these people don't have neighbors. This is like a trailer in the middle of a forest in a very secluded rural part of Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and we have reason, we don't know for sure, but I'm comfortable putting this out there. We have reason to believe that the one highway that this home sits on, that the police have information on every vehicle that passed by the home that morning. The reason I say that is during the, I mentioned earlier how they had the dispatch radio communications from that morning. One of the dispatcher receives a call from a neighbor, like someone who lives further up the road, who volunteered, if you need any information on vehicles that passed that today, I can give you that information.
Well, you just got a call from a Justin Smith who lives close by to where you guys are now. He said he can talk to members about any vehicles that passed on Highway 289. If you guys need to get a hold of him, I can always send his number down to you guys if needed.
And I thought, how would they know that? But then I thought of, I have a video doorbell, and every time a car goes by, I get a 15-second video of that car. So I wonder if it's something like that. And they thought, maybe this could help the investigation.
Or maybe there's cameras on that, quote, quiet highway nearby. I don't know.
So that, dear listener, is good information. That is helpful information to the RCMP, not like the other thing that came in, which was people saying that they were having a wild party 2 nights earlier. And Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about that because you've come to the bottom of that. So just so the listeners are aware, there's speculation online that the parents had some party, and Jordan has been able to isolate where that actual information came from.
Yeah, it's actually quite disturbing, and it's something that has come up is this idea that the night before the kids went missing, the Thursday night, that there was this wild drug-fueled party at the parents' home that would explain why they were in bed so late. There was all these people coming and going. And this idea of a party just became a part of the conversation. So many theories and speculation and just discussion online were talking about this party as if it was a fact, as if the RCMP released photos of this party happening, like it was that kind of concrete of a thing. But when I dug into it, and I've been following this story from the very beginning, when I dug into it, what it actually is in a major Facebook group that was discussing this case at the time, you could post anonymously. Somebody posted anonymously, and they shared a screenshot of a text conversation that they said they were having with a neighbor who lives near the children who went missing. And if you read the text conversation that they shared anonymously, it basically said, I drove by there a few days ago. I don't know if it was Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday, but it was around 2 p.m. and there was a whole bunch of cars out front. Maybe they were having a party or something.
So hold on. So this was an anonymous poster, red flag number one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A text conversation between two people who claim to be neighbors, but could actually be just anybody on the internet.
They said themselves in the text, they said, I live just 500 meters from there. So I should say there is not a home within 500 meters of there. But
no,
yeah.
Do we even have an address on, what is the road called again?
It's on Gerlach Road.
Yeah.
Do we have an official
So just to wrap
address?
that little piece up. So this individual shares a screenshot of a conversation that they had on Messenger as fact that there was some sort of party, but it turns out the party, quote unquote, is just some cars parked at 2:00 in the afternoon on maybe Wednesday or maybe Thursday.
Exactly.
So that turns into a Thursday night rager, drug-fueled party,
And the kids got into
go
meth.
missing. Yeah. So it's just like that. And again, I just want to highlight the person who offered their Ring camera footage and said, I can identify cars. Good citizen, good, helpful citizen. The person who said, I may have seen some cars parked there at 2:00 in the afternoon on maybe Wednesday or Thursday, not helpful.
If it's even real.
It's helpful. Like if you saw cars there, sure, great. But assuming that means that there was a raging drug-fueled party, not helpful.
Well, it just shows how sketchy or completely fake information can get built up on and spun out of control. And so, and where it really gets ugly is I found YouTube videos and TikTok videos where people are talking specifically about this party. YouTube videos where this party was the topic of a 2-hour-long conversation that points the finger at the parents for being involved, that have in videos that have hundreds of thousands of views. So it's just this fake piece of information that is salaciously shared and just becomes a major part of the story. And I think there are a lot of people who want to know what's happening and want to try to understand how these kids went missing. And in the absence of information, that void can be filled by these bottom feeders. And there is a lot of that happening in this story.
So has this, I may not have noticed this, but has this case, because that doesn't sound like, that sounds like a more, like we all kind of know who's in the true crime space in Canadian podcasting and stuff like that. And we know that some of the crime talkers and stuff like that, but like, has this case hit American YouTube? Is that's that's exactly what it is. It's this case is gone past people like us who are discussing Canadian crime to people who are discussing international tragedy. Like for example, the channel that I just mentioned that did a video with hundreds of thousands of views specifically about the party and its effect on this case. When I looked at their channel, a lot of what they covered before the videos about Lilly and Jack Sullivan were about the royal family and the Diddy trial. So it's these people who just cover, whatever clickbaity stuff they can put out there. And the story of two missing children and the parents who maybe did it. Right. That's an easy sell when you're on TikTok and YouTube and everything else.
Right. People want sexy and salacious clickbaity headlines, which is, look, I understand there's 2 kids missing. People have a lot of questions. People have suspicions, and that's completely fine. Yeah. And I think you can have these discussions at the dinner table with your family, with your friends. When I think it becomes inappropriate is when you're having these kind of finger pointy conversations on the internet where these people or people who know these people can see these comments. Yeah. And these are real people who have lost their children. I don't know what's going on with I don't know if they have been abducted. We don't know if these parents are guilty. I don't think they're guilty. I think this is a case of misadventure. I don't know how you feel.
My thought is if 2 kids are going to go missing, I'm going to give their parents the benefit of a doubt until I wouldn't make that decision or even give an opinion on that at this point. Unless I knew that something shady was going on with the parents, I wouldn't create something that pointed a finger at them. And what you just said, Kate, about this idea about these conversations could be had at a dinner table but not online. The difference as well is not only are these conversations happening online, a lot of these conversations are happening online to massive audiences with ads inserted in them.
100%.
And we should also mention too, if you have listeners outside of Canada, they may not realize that on a lot of social media, Instagram and Facebook, the Canadian news sites can't publish their content there because our government is in a battle with Meta about how Meta reimburses media. So because our mainstream media and professional journalists can't put the story out there, Wacko Johnson with his YouTube channel can put his video on YouTube and share it to Facebook with a caption that says, undeniable evidence points finger at stepfather.
We can't even share a link, just so what people outside of Canada understand.
We can't.
It's so dystopian. Do you explain it?
And to say like, hey, no, CTV said this is debunked. I can't put. I have to screenshot it and put it up, or
As a picture,
or
not
I
a
have
link.
to copy and paste it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's crazy. Even sometimes trying to send a link through through a messaging direct message on Instagram doesn't work either. So it's like, so it's actually creating this vacuum, which is, I mean, a larger conversation.
And because I know there's a person in the audience listening right now, because you just said it's the people who are, talking about this and putting ads in the middle. Yes, there are going to be ads in the middle of this podcast episode, but we're not purposely spreading disinformation for clicks.
Yeah. The difference is,
I just want to, because I know there's somebody out there who's like,
of course, but the point I'm trying to make is, it's one thing for there to be ads in the middle of this, but imagine if we made the thumbnail something that would suggest we have this breaking information that you had to listen to because it was going to show you the parents did it. And we then had an hour-long conversation about a bunch of stuff that wasn't even true and had that filled with ads.
Yeah.
That's a different way to generate, to monetize misinformation and slander.
Two quick stories that really helped me so when we first got into this space, there was one case that we covered and I thought it was foul play 100%. But then I've spoken to 3 close people in the family, and all 3 people have a different perspective. Like, one is misadventure, one is mental health, and one is maybe foul play. And then there was another case that we covered where I thought for sure it was foul play, but people were bringing in cults. They were bringing in the ex-boyfriend, the boyfriend, the previous altercation, and it turned out that it was a suicide, and it was a female young mom. Like, everybody was like, she would never do anything like that.
She just bought a new car.
Yeah, she had just bought a new car. She had all this. So it's just, the reason why I bring those up is not to tell those people's trauma. It's just to say, like, I was totally wrong. Like, and I work in this space. So it's like, it's actually those cases early on have helped me to stop being a speculator
and stop being so certain of my opinions.
Yeah, exactly. Stop being so certain. I don't need to be so certain. Like, very little is known. We know that for 2 weeks, some of the most trained professional people have been trying to find these 2 kids and haven't been able to find them. Like, that speaks. So we know that that's a fact. The best of the best of walking through the forest and looking for people can't find 2 kids who couldn't have gotten more than a kilometer. If we look at Lilly from Chilliwack, she got 700 meters, which was considered very far for her age. And so we know these kids have not been found within that radius at this point. And then what else do we know aside from that?
Mm-hmm.
Is there other disinformation, misinformation that has been making its way through the internet that you've seen that you'd like to maybe?
There is so much of disinformation, misinformation, and things that I just couldn't corroborate one way or another. One thing you'll see spoken about is this opinion that, or this idea that drugs were found in the house during the initial search. There's no information to suggest that to be true. But I see it over and over again. People talking about how drugs were found in the home.
Police would never make that public. Like, let's say there was drug paraphernalia found in that home. Mm-hmm. That's going to go on a text page in the file on their database.
Certainly.
And they're not going to make that public.
No. Certainly. That's something I see written over and over again. And it seems to be written often in the context of, and then at the party, right. And people will use that as this theory that, I don't know, the kids got into something they shouldn't have. There was drugs in the house. There is no evidence of any of that. If it didn't come from Daniel, the stepfather who talks to the news a lot, then I would say it's BS, because the RCMP, they have been more transparent than I'm used to seeing. They've been talking to the media a lot, issuing regular press releases, and they have to, because the public interest in this case is so high. They've been releasing a lot and sharing a lot, but they're not going to talk about the behind the scenes investigation. Anything like that, we're getting bits and pieces from Daniel talking to the media, saying probably more than someone should. But the drugs, that is misinformation. Or if not, just an intentional lie someone put out there to slander the parents, right. The party.
My question is, let's walk the garden path of that thought process. So let's say there was a party. There were drugs. The kids got into some drugs. they've still gone missing. So is the thought that they got into drugs, they overdosed, and the parents have gotten rid of the children? Is that like the...
Man, I could tell you so many theories that I've seen, not like 5 people talking about. I've seen theories that people are almost rooting for as if it's the home team of their home hockey team. Like they're sure of this happening. What you just said, this idea that the kids got into something and the parents, stepfather and mother are trying to hide it. This idea that they were sold off to pay off a drug debt. Lots of people believe that, but a lot of people also have this bizarre understanding of what human trafficking is and how that actually happens in Canada.
Yeah.
It's something that we've noticed. People really have a misunderstanding of how prevalent it is and how it works here.
I'm sure, there are the shooting star cases where that may happen, but human trafficking generally isn't a 4 and a 6-year-old child scooped up from rural Nova Scotia and sold off to this like satanic pedophile ring. But some people think that's actually what happens.
A 14 to 18-year-old girl who is being absolutely love bombed with drugs, alcohol, and finances, and then eventually coerced after the love bombing ends into the sex trade, and then moved around North America. That's the reality of like.
I mean, I'm not going to say anything's impossible,
but even like the sex trade the human trafficking for children is like, so we're trying to, we believe that that a van pulled up to this rural home, or some car pulled up and took the children away to pay off what kind of drug debt? Like, how much are we talking about here?
These are theories by people who don't understand this stuff anyway. So the theories wouldn't get that involved. It's like, oh, it's drugs. They probably sold them.
But that's one I like to bring those people. Okay. Well, let's look at that deeper.
It dragged them into specifics. I love doing that. It's like, okay, well, tell me more about this theory.
Because it's easy to say that. It's easy to just say these words, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, oh, like, it was a satanic ritual and they were a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it's like, what evidence do you have of that other than you saw it on the TV one time?
Yeah, exactly. Or, well, it's like nowadays I saw it on YouTube. Or, of course, psychics pop up out of nowhere. So you see a lot of people referencing psychics, and somehow things psychics said will get meshed into the common, like the mainline discussion as well.
I'm laughing because I know you got an unkind message about psychics. I want to say, I believe that there are people out there who are differently abled. And there are some people out there. I don't know. I don't hate all psychics.
Kate's got her crystals in the window. She's got her cards.
Sure.
Like, so we have our
cards. Yeah. I'm not sure about all psychics. I think there are people who take advantage of these types of situations.
Yeah.
Who prey on people who are hurting and grieving in that type of world. That being said, I'm not laughing at all psychics. I'm not blanket statementing all of those people. However, somebody can you tell us what they said to you? Because I merch.
Yeah. And I will tell you, my grandmother was a palm reader. She does tea leaves as well. I'm in that world. But the issue I have is the person who creates a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel, and what they do is just find what the big tragedy is and try to talk to the people involved in it and make these meandering videos where they're saying nonsense. And then equal, or if not worse than that, is the people who then take those videos and send them to the RCMP to be like, have you seen this? Here's the tip.
And again, bogs down an investigator who has to deal with that. And
they're like, I was going to go and do something useful today, but now I have to spend an hour writing this up in Prime.
Yeah.
But long story short, and I think in my second episode, I've been doing an episode once a week about this case, kind of just talking about everything that's happened over the past week. In fact, like later tonight, I'll be recording an episode covering what's happened in the second week since their disappearance. But in my prior episode, I guess said things about, I devalued the contribution of some of the psychics on YouTube that are assisting, I'm using air quotes, assisting in this case. And I got an email from a listener, probably ex-listener, saying, why don't you leave the psychics alone, you Nova Scotian POS? And you know what POS is.
I really want merch that says Nova Scotian
POS. Yeah.
I self-identify as that before that email, and they didn't change my opinion on psychics, I'll tell you that. On psychics who assist in missing persons investigations, or psychics that can like for a set amount of money will help someone fall in love with you or something. It's
And I also want to say, people who don't podcast, the conversations that we have, there's not always a lot of time for nuance, right? I mean, just because you're saying there's psychics out there who aren't great and they lead people down a path that they don't need to go down, that doesn't mean you're saying that about every person out there who identifies as psychic or a medium or whatever, right? I mean,
I can't qualify every statement that I make, just like the families of the victims can't qualify every statement they make.
No, we'd be here for 3 hours.
Yeah,
you wouldn't listen. You'd be bored.
And I do want to shift gears for a second around that and just talk about, I don't know anything about the family. Like I've seen Daniel, the clips. I heard that one clip about from the mom. That's all I really know. And I could, yes, of course, I could judge them on, their property or whatever. But, I've sort of grown away from that as a person. If that's how people live, that's how they live. I'm sure they have a reason for it. They've just got a lot of stuff, right? But what I believe that the perspective I can give is that over the years, what I have learned is there are no perfect victims and there are no perfect victim families. And so, we will cover cases of missing people. They have a lot of dark history. If we had all gone missing on our worst day, like what would people say about us, and or if we had a loved one go missing or our children go on our worst day, like when we were in debt and when we were in addiction and when we were, just out of a divorce or whatever, what would people say about us or you or anybody? And so I look at like Dylan Ehler's family, right? Not the perfect victims. Like they reacted in a lot of wild ways. Like, his dad was banned from the Truro Police Department because he was going in there screaming and yelling. And then people pulled a whole bunch of like information about possible scams that they had going with regards to, I think it was COVID money or something like that. Like I don't quote me on it, but it's like that. None of that equals guilt
or murder
of murdering your child. Like, so yes, this is a rural family that doesn't look like they have a lot of means. I think that Daniel was working 1 day a week at a sawmill. Mom wasn't working. Like that's tough. Those are tough times.
Absolutely. But not unique. There are many people living like that. And just everything you just said there, it makes so much sense. But one other thing to think of is like, if you were to go missing, who in your family or which one of your loved ones would be the one talking to the news, and how would they do in that situation? Because many people like to be on the news, like a film team is coming tonight, we're going to interview you on the evening news. That would be so like just anxiety riddled that God knows how you'd come off. And in this case,
15 seconds of your 1 hour interview.
Yeah, we'll talk to you for an hour. We'll use 20 seconds of it. And then 50,000 people are going on Facebook are going to decide if you killed your kids based on that clip we air.
Yeah.
It's awful. And it's like, that's the thing. There are no perfect victims. There are no perfect victim families. You're not like okay, great. Got the money in the bank, got the nice house ready to go. Now my kids can go missing, and again, no playbook is handed to the families of the missing either. Like, oh, this is how you deal with 50,000 Facebook people who are all like angry at you. Like this is how you do a grid search. Like, I think about Heather Stuka on Sun Peaks Mountain when she had to teach herself how to do like contour searching and grid searching on the mountain because nobody was there for her anymore. Like these are things that these families have to learn on the fly. And if they have means, then that's okay. Like it's not okay. It makes it a little bit easier, right? But if you don't, you're not of means. Like I spoke to one family a couple of weeks ago and I was telling them about different people, like please bring me home. And they just said to me, like, we don't know about these things because they live in like literally in the middle of Saskatchewan. But southern, like so closer to the US. So they don't have access to this information because they're not in all the missing groups and that kind of thing, Yeah.
It's almost like when tragedy hits close to home for you, it's almost like one thing you need is like a manager to like come and assist you. And that's why, groups like Please Bring Me Home, and there's other groups like that. That's one purpose they serve is we can help you navigate media, social media, all these things that you never would want to deal with while dealing with, the worst experience.
And I almost wish the RCMP would, I know they're busy. I know this, like the RCMP is a very busy organization, but I almost wish they would let families know about all the options that are available to them that are outside of their organization,
yeah,
right?
not just victim services inside the
that they'd have these pamphlets for Wings of Mercy, Please Bring Me Home. There's a bunch of nonprofit organizations in Canada that are available to people of families of missing people, but I don't know that the RCMP always guides the families in that direction, and they're kind of left to figure it out on their own. And
Well, but also, like, what does it say about them that if victim services can't do everything you need to do, and they're then recommending these other unrelated groups, maybe it would just make them look bad to not be like a one-stop shop?
well, I mean, yeah, but there's there's only so much they can do, right? Because
That's true.
underfunded and
they investigate crime.
They investigate
period.
crime and
investigate a complaint comes in. They investigate, search for evidence of a crime, and then recommend charges if that's what happened, right? But then missings are just a whole other thing. Missings are like, okay, we got to get people together, which is why SAR comes in.
I wish we had a dedicated missing persons task force, like a federal thing that was like alongside the RCMP that could dedicate more of their time to specifically missing persons files. But I just don't think it's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, but we'll see.
All this to say, with this case, for 2 children to have gone missing, nothing to be found after 2 weeks and counting, unprecedented, completely defies statistics. Most missing persons cases in Canada are wrapped up within 24 hours. Very unusual for it to go on beyond a week. And that said, if you look at missing persons cases in Canada, especially if you drill down to missing children, the overwhelming majority of them are runaway cases, which this clearly isn't. So statistically, this is just an abnormality in every way. And again, the wild card here is that it's 2 kids and not 1 in rural Nova Scotia. Every new update that comes out, I'm waiting to hear something significant. I'm shocked that it hasn't happened yet. It's
I know.
And unfortunately, that significant thing is the as the weight of what we're talking about sort of like lands, right? Like what we are talking about is 2 kids who have been missing for 2 very small, like young children who have been missing for 16 days. And the end result of this is going to be something that will, impact Canadians when we find out, unless there's some miracle of survival or some mistake or something like this. It doesn't, unfortunately, look good.
No, it looks like they're going to, recover remains likely, but I mean, I don't know what's next. I think the police have just concluded their search efforts on May 18th. And the last line here is, this weekend search will be carefully reviewed and assessed by investigators and search managers to help in planning any further ground and air search efforts. So that there sounds like if we decide to do more.
Yeah, at the time of the recording of this, they are just wrapping up their second search. Like when they restarted the search, they're just wrapping that up, and it looks as though it's not going to continue beyond tonight. Although the decision hasn't formally been made yet, it seems unlikely, and that would tell me it's unlikely they found anything substantial. Although they haven't come out and said that yet. As far as where this goes, they've searched the forest enough where I can say it's unlikely the kids are in there.
But then we've seen cases like this where it end up like they're found 500 meters, and I'm like, well, why did nobody find them?
Yeah.
They were there the whole time, but
including search dogs, because it's I get people air, but like search dogs that's a powerful tool.
They're good. They're good at what they do, and they had drones, they had thermal drones, they had all of the equipment that you would want out there, all the experts, all the dogs. They really pulled out every last resource they had.
And I think that's a part of the reason, and people cannot understand that, and that leads to people making comparisons to this case and like Chris Watts in the United States, or here in Nova Scotia, we had a woman, Penny Boudreau, who was eventually convicted of murdering her daughter. Yeah. A lot of people are making comparisons to that case, but I think that is just like what. And I hate to say it, but it's just like I don't know what could have happened here.
Well, and Penny was very good at going to the media and crying. You know what I mean? Like, I know we people for some reason on the audience people, like that, not our audience, but like the Facebook people who watch this kind of stuff, they're like, why was there no tears, or how come they had too many tears, or whatever, right? But like Penny was, Penny, who did end up she did murder her daughter, and she acted all the right ways in front of the media.
But then people ripped her apart too.
After.
After people were buying it. They were buying what she was selling at first.
They didn't like Vernon. They liked Penny.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how innocent Vernon is, but but who knows?
But to make comparisons between this story and that story, the reason we know about Penny Boudreau, it was such a unique and unusual thing. It's not something that happens all the time, that someone goes on the news and cries and begs for help finding the person that they had just, murdered. But people are making that comparison. And again, I think it's just people can't understand why nothing was found. Yeah. Was it an abduction? Was it a kidnapping? Was there some sort of foul play?
Yeah.
It's a mystery, and maybe that's why this case has gotten so much attention. Is it's such a mystery without a logical explanation.
That's 100% why. I mean, I was just looking at the top comment on the timeline on Reddit. The top comment is, "I don't like that they were absent from school for 48 hours before they went missing." That's a red flag to me, because I think what they're saying is did they really go missing that morning, or have they been missing since Wednesday, and they've had now 48 hours to invent their story, clean up whatever they did. So I think there's a lot. I understand why people are invested in this case. There's not enough answers. There's too many questions. We have two parents, a stepdad and a biological mother, who are making public appearances. And so people love those because they get to rip them apart. Because, I mean, look at Chris Watts. He went in front of the camera, said, "I want my wife and kids back." We all know how that ended. We've been, I guess, betrayed by people before, where they, you know what I mean? Like, we felt bad. We saw their sob stories, but it turns out they were playing us. And I think people always want to see that now.
Or at least have to think of it as a possibility. But again, it's like the unicorn of grieving parents. Like there's a handful of cases you can point out where that was.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, the parents had nothing to do with it, and these really are just two missing kids.
And I do want to point out that Redditor's comment, like, I know I was kind of like going full force on the Facebook comment sections. Like, as Canadians, we can publicly participate in interests of public matter. Like, we can do that on social media. We absolutely 100% can do that. I love Web Sleuth. It's very smart. There's people provide very smart information on there. Some of the Reddit threads, very smart people. Like that person, what they just commented, that's an interesting question. It's not an accusation. It's just like,
they're
hey,
just
that's
saying,
interesting.
Hey, that's weird.
So like, yeah, by all means, participate. Participate, have your voice or whatever, but just be mindful of what defamation actually is in Canada, and be mindful that people involved in this case might see your comments, and there is a risk level there for you.
Well, and also ask yourself, is this necessary?
Yeah.
Before you hit enter or send, is this adding to the conversation?
Yeah. Do you want to hear about my unpopular idea that would completely change the world and fix the internet?
Yes.
Yes.
If every online interaction, whether it's liking a post, replying to a post, posting something, sharing something, if everything simply cost 5 cents.
Yeah.
It would it's not a lot of money, so I don't think it would exclude anyone from the online discourse, but it's enough that you would, at least for a second, be like, should I?
Yeah.
Oh, mine was, it should be delayed for 24 hours.
I like that one too.
I know that kills the idea of news or whatever. Like,
yeah,
like if there's some war that broke out that people want instant news on it, or some tragedy or whatever. But I think that like comment sections and those things, they should go through an algorithm filter for 24 hours that decides whether it's useful or not.
See,
I think my 5 cent idea would work.
But I think the best thing is we get rid of comment sections altogether.
Yeah, well,
no discourse for you.
Maybe not. I think
we're not good at this, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to solve it. Anyway, this has been a great conversation. Like, this case is a mystery, but it's important. There's 2 missing kids, and a country of people. Like, this story has spread far and wide. A country of people who want to see an end to this, preferably an end that involves them being brought home, but at least an end to the mystery.
Yeah.
And I think, if people do have information, if they have information or sightings, If they have
Or
tips,
credible
tips.
tips.
Where can they send that information? They can always call Crime Stoppers.
Simply the Nova Scotia RCMP or any RCMP. You call your local RCMP station.
And I have the file number here. It is 2025-583775. So that will be the file number that you quote when you're giving your tip.
Mm-hmm. And that Crime Stoppers number, of course, is 1-800-222-8477.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Nighttime. Now, before we part, I want to send positive vibes to everyone affected by this case, and I also want to send a sincere thank you to everyone searching for Jack and Lilly. This is truly a nightmare scenario, and I think everybody out there feels the same way. When kids go missing, everything else takes second priority. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode, but before I do, I have some thanks to pass out. First, a big thanks to Graeme and Kate of True North True Crime. If any of you are unfamiliar with their work, I couldn't recommend their show more. You can hear True North True Crime wherever you get podcasts. A big thanks to Monty, Datta, who contributes the music for this show, and Linz from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides my intro and outro voiceovers. And then lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you goes out to each and every one of you listening to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, this show would be as pointless as it would be impossible. Now, on the topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the premium feed. Gail, Morborg, and Kevin, we appreciate you. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. First of all, a premium feed subscription costs just a couple bucks a month, and that money will fund the creation of new episodes. But the premium feed will also give you those episodes 2 days early, give them to you ad-free, and give you access to a back catalog of episodes. If that sounds like something you're interested in, you can go premium at nighttimepodcast.com/subscribe. And even if you don't want to go premium, you can still support the show by sharing this episode with all your like-minded friends and letting them know why they should listen. Your support is very much appreciated. And until next time, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.